JD is a co-founder and chairman of the Pituitary World News. JD was diagnosed with acromegaly in October of 2010, and doctors missed his condition for over 30 years. So he decided to do something to make sure that that didn't happen or happen less. He founded Pituitary World News in 2014 with Dr. Louis Belvins, MD, a pituitary neuroendocrinologist and the director of the Center of Pituitary Disorders at the University of California, San Francisco. His professional career includes over 30 years of marketing management, communication, and research experience. He has worked for top national communication agencies and developed marketing and communication programs for international and national leading brands. We all know JD because he does amazing presentation and puts out amazing information that he sends out to us patients. And because of that, we have learned more and grown more. So JD is going to do a presentation for us.
Thank you. No arguing. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. I know I've met some of you in past meetings, but Canada is a wonderful place to be, and I have to tell you that the first meeting that I ever, as a newly diagnosed acromegaly patient, the first meeting that I came to was in 2017 here in Vancouver, and that was the first time I had spent any time with anybody else with acromegaly. And to me, that was something that I, like many of us, has said, I will never forget. So, and it was a wonderful meeting, and as well as the meeting in Toronto, and I'm always happy to be here to tell you what we've been doing with Pituitary World News. So I'll get to that quickly. I apologize, I'm going to move through some of this a little faster because I have a plane to catch, and Alaska has decided I have to go to the ticket counter and not get the, anyway. So they may not let me out of Canada, I'm not sure. So, which is the? Okay, here we go. So, for those of you who haven't seen Pituitary World News, we started in 2014 over a cup of coffee with Dr. Blevins. And the question we asked is, why does it take someone 30 years to get diagnosed? And because of my background, particularly in the communications business, we decided to use awareness as a key component of what we wanted to do. We strategized that with awareness comes interest, with interest comes discussion, with discussion comes change, and people get involved. So I'm going to touch a little bit today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, but I want to talk about two concepts. One is awareness, the other is collaboration or amplification. We have, this is I call it a web-style magazine, but when we thought of it, we thought, you're familiar with the Huffington Post. We wanted Pituitary World News to be like the Huffington Post of the pituitary world. So people would come with contributions. We would generate more content. We would do content aggregation, which is taking stories that are out there and have an opinion on it and figure out how to talk about pituitary disease that is people want to, in a way that people want to read it. When I looked at first, learned at acromegaly, I found millions of pieces of information on acromegaly, but nothing organized. Not one place that you could go to say, okay, well, here's something that gives me an idea of what's going on in pituitary disease, particularly in acromegaly. So that idea of doing like a news clearinghouse was very much in our thought when we started this. Right now we have over 650 proprietary articles. There's about 150 original podcasts that are downloadable, and you can listen to them, and they're all relevant, which creates a problem, which is, what do we put in the front page? You know, we want people to find these. Right now we started about 14, we actually started it in May, doing live broadcast every other Thursday at 3. So we do a talk show, kind of the Howard Stern of the pituitary world, I guess you could say. We've been relatively successful in our audience, but what we do is we get a lot of downloads afterwards. So if you haven't participated, we encourage you to go to the live talk page and click on the studio Thursday at 3, and you can get in the studio and ask as many questions as you want to have a discussion. We have different guests. It's been a really good experience. Next week, Dr. Blevins is going to talk to Dr. Sandeep Kunar, who's a neurosurgeon at UCSF, and they usually have a very, very good discussion when they both get together and chat about, their cases and things and what they learn and what they don't learn. So it's a wonderful way to do that. We have guests. I'm hoping to have Dr. Cusimano in one of our programs, or if not, definitely do a podcast. So putting you on the spot. Anyway,
3 o'clock
Pacific time, yes, which is, we're trying to find a good time, and that's sometimes an issue. So let me tell you very quickly, I'm going to run through these. This is how people access us. We have about 55% mobile, desktop is the next, the tablet. We get around 3.6 pages per visit, which means that because the way we write the articles, there's links to other things that are more information and typically resources that people can learn more about whatever they're reading. Oops. This is our worldwide reach. We do about 62% of our audience in the US. As you can see, Canada is 8%. This goes up and down a little bit. That's just a slice in time on average, more or less what our... We obviously would like to have higher global reach, particularly in the areas of need where pituitary patients don't have. I'm on the board of the World Alliance of Pituitary Organizations, which is an organization that works with patient leaders and advocates to make sure that we all work together to get the word out of acromegaly globally, or not, pituitary disease and acromegaly. We started publishing in Spanish a couple of years ago. That sort of suffered during COVID, but we hope now with normality coming, we can get back to publishing a little more. So let me talk a little bit about awareness. And awareness is an interesting thing because if I were to ask the question in this room, name a disease that comes from the pituitary glands with excess growth hormone, I'd say we have 100% awareness, and that is called unaided awareness in the marketing world. If I go out to the lobby and ask 10 people, tell me a disease that comes from the pituitary gland, the growth hormone, maybe 0.2% of the people will say acromegaly. If I show, now I'm going to say to them, well, okay, if they say I don't know any, I'm going to list a number of diseases. I'm going to say, which disease do you recognize in this list? Probably less than 1% will say acromegaly. If I say, this is a disease that Andre the Giant had, now people say, oh, I know exactly what that is. I heard of it. Okay, so there's some issues with stigma with Andre the Giant, but that is the thought process that we had when we said we need a vehicle that helps get the word out beyond this room. So there's many ways. We thought through it. And what we do with Pititary World News is think of it as your amplifier. We try to make what you do bigger and try to figure out a way to communicate to people that are in the lobby or outside in the streets. So when we think about how we communicate, how we talk about it, and the work that we do with all of the organizations that we work with, but specifically with our advocate partners, is what kind of work do we need to do? How do we talk? Who do we need to reach? So we did this, when we first started, we did what's called a strategic communications plan, and we looked at how do we divide the audiences. So it's not only how do we talk about it, but who do we need to reach with what message? And could we segment these audiences? Because obviously, unless you're Nike and you have $500 million a year, you're not going to get this awareness out there to let the whole world know. But who are the important audiences that we need to reach? And we divided that into these audiences. So you have, I'm just going to go through some. But obviously, pituitary patients and families are critical to reach because we have that education piece in our website. But also primary care physicians. It's extremely difficult audience to get to because of the way it works, and they're so busy. But also patient blogs of all kinds, related specialty physicians. I'm talking about ophthalmologists and pharmacists and medical nursing schools and health educators. Dr. Cusimano yesterday in his experience, in his presentation, mentioned jewelers. Fantastic idea. I mean, jewelers is, or podiatrists, people that see people with big feet. I have a good friend who's an ophthalmologist who once told me a story that he had a patient, he was a freshly starting ophthalmologist, and a patient with acromegaly said he had never seen anybody, but didn't fit in the machine, whatever they call it. And he was aware because his wife happened to be a neurologist. They said, "Oh no, that's acromegaly." So they sent it immediately to a center. But anyway, but there's also all this other things about media, and these are general media outlets. So we think, what would be an interesting story to tell, let's say, a general blog? And could we start talking about things in ways that people connect it to acromegaly? For example, there's, as you know, a lot of growth hormone usage, or there used to be in the professional sports field. So those stories, those interesting stories that gives us the opportunity to talk about acromegaly and other pituitary diseases to a broader audience. We have, we're learning constantly about these segments and sometimes refining them a little bit and trying to get through creating programs to reach these in different ways. We've been lucky. We had a couple of stories picked up by the New York Times health magazine, and the Endocrine News published a couple of our podcasts that we published during COVID. So that was those are nice hits because we get a much broader audience. On average, we do weekly about 2,000 people through the site. On a good month, we'll get 15, 16,000. It varies depending on how much we publish and the subjects. I can tell you that hands down, mental health is probably the most interest in mental health. We get at least 3 times the amount of hits on mental health related articles than anything else. So this is very quickly the case for awareness through consumer and trade communications. It's a sort of a simple. This is in the communications world we've taught to get as simple as you can and a brief so you can communicate quickly. It used to be that when I started in the advertising business, it would take a frequency of 5 to get somebody to remember a commercial or a message. Today that number is probably 15, 20 because of the way that media segmented. Social media has made a mess out of everything. It's been such a great thing for so many things and such a disaster for other things, including misinformation, as you know. That's a completely different presentation, but we think about it all the time. How do we fight that? So the simple sort of strategies, communication leads to information, which leads to interest. If you can get somebody interested, they're going to engage. If they engage, they're going to be better informed, and the better informed people will spread the information faster. So the higher number we have of informed people, we think that's a direct correlation of the time it will take to get somebody diagnosed. And I think, like all of the physicians and doctors physicians that presented yesterday, if we can shave 3 or 4 years of the average, we probably will improve quality of life tremendously. So this is sort of a slow changing effort to get to to these lower diagnosis levels. And then obviously the next issue is how do we measure it? But we were talking yesterday with Dr. Asa and Dr. Cusimano about that. But it's important to measure too. So the other things that we think about is how do we create interest, how we talk through it. I mentioned a little bit about stigma. I always get, not upset, I shouldn't say upset, but for me to explain acromegaly sometimes all I have to say is Andrew the Giant. And then that creates a whole bunch of different issues because as communicators what we want is to lower that stigma, to say this happens to everybody, normal people. Most people that have acromegaly look nothing like Andrew the Giant. And we need to get through that. I know Jill works constantly with that, and Deanna. So it's something that we get a chance to shape how we do these messages, and we try to be conscious of that and convince people, or at least talk to people, that this can happen to anyone at any time in their life. It's totally random. And it happens a lot, even though people say it's rare. And I mean, there were some presentations yesterday. We don't really think it's that rare, so anyway, that's a different story. This is our logic model. I'm not going to bore you with it, but it tells you that there's a method to the madness. So we go from the lack of information from assumptions that we made about what's going on in the world today of pituitary disease communication and what kind of impacts we can have, and then go through these activities, outputs, and outcomes that will lead to the impact. It's just a sort of a logic way of thinking. So when we look at the type of programs and initiatives, we say, does it fit this logic model? If it does, then we try to do it. And then the impact, obviously, we want to get as many people as possible with knowledge of pituitary disease so they can do something. And then engage and collaborate. Pituitary World News is a collaborative platform. I say that it's open to anybody that wants to sit down with me and say, well, let's do this. Jill and I and Deanna and I we constantly are talking about how do we do things better? Where do we need to put a pressure? Are we learning? Are we not learning? What mistakes did we make? All of that. So for me, it's been I know Jill has said this many times, so I'm going to steal one of her lines, a gift. I never thought, if you would have asked me 15 years ago what I was going to be doing when I retired, this is the last thing. I didn't even know acromegaly almost existed. So it's been a full-time thing for me since 2018, and it's been very, very rewarding. And the main reason it's because I get to meet people like you. So it's wonderful to be here, and thanks for your attention. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay. I want to mention this too, sorry. I'm not going to be able to stay for the question and answer, but if you have any questions, or please reach out, and if there's anything that we can answer or talk about, it'd be great. This is what I call our playground, where we play, kind of, which is the patient advocacy support groups and the search engines optimization areas, Google, and there's a few new ones, but pretty much it's Google. Social media, we've been having this love-hate relationship with Facebook. We're actually pretty pissed off about Facebook right now because they want us to pay for everything. So, but anyway, that's a little bit of a different story. But I would tell you that there's a subscribe button on Pituitary World News, and the problem with Facebook is that they're not. In the old days, we would reach everybody that was following us, and more. So we publish something, maybe 10,000, 15,000 views on Facebook would come through. Today, that number is 200. And immediately after I post, it says, if you want to boost your post, give me $20 or whatever it is, which is not the money that it's the issue, is that they can't tell us if we're indeed going to be reaching the 4,000 people that they're saying we're going to reach. They haven't proved it yet. So we encourage everybody to subscribe, because if you subscribe, then when we publish something, you get it on your mailbox, and you will typically get 1 or 2 emails from us, and we have a disclosure statement that says that we will absolutely never, ever share your email with anybody. So, and then just quickly, this is the some of our target of things that we've pitched articles to. So for this amplification and this broadening of the audience. So, thank you very much.